Okay. Okay, folks, you're seeing a black screen possibly, but maybe not. We're here at community dinner in the dark. No. And what's the date? April Fool's Day. Oh, that's a perfect start to an April Fool's Day. We've got a black screen. April Fool's. I better go to a share screen, at least for now. Jeez. So we're going to go to a share screen and you guys can look at, oh, wait, there we go. Of course. Now it's coming through. There you go. Yay. So there's a there's a cleanse starting tomorrow, and so we're going to talk about some spring energy tonight. And there's also kind of a round robin. If somebody has something they want to address, we can talk about it. And really, transitioning forward, like what is spring energy, and what does that mean inside of ourselves? And we're in this kind of great kind of awakening right now on the earth. So that's kind of the springtime for the earth too. And so let's start with the logistics of cleansing. Is anybody here at the table cleansing? Well, yeah, you are. Well, you got to monitor your vitality actually. So good example, I had a client today. We did his blood pressure check lying down and standing up. It fell 30 points when he stood up. And he's like, oh, I do a water fast. No. So if your blood pressure falls 30 points when you're standing up, it's a certain value laying down, and then it's supposed to go up when you stand up. That's the whole point of doing the check, is to quantify adrenal fatigue. And so at 30 points falling is generally when people are exhausted. And this man's not sleeping though. He has, it's just an interesting scenario of a restlessness that keeps the guy from sleeping. And then he has adrenal fatigue, but it's because he's not sleeping. It's this chicken or the egg thing, So what do you start with? Do you try to exhaust the guy during the day so he's just exhausted at night? Or do you try and give a lot of minerals and calming agents to calm the system? So that's why the modern day doctor, to pick on that, and like the American Medical Association, like you talk about controlled opposition, there's a lot of mixed messages that come in. Like there's really sincere doctors, and they're sort of get trapped in the system that's so corrupt that you either go corrupt or you have to drop out. I know because I've talked personally to doctors, and including there's the head of family medicine here locally. That's a quote, like you either get out or you're stuck. And right now I'm being told that the AI is running the protocols in the hospitals from good sources. So if the AI is running the protocols in the hospitals, that means there's a money stream running things. And I know there's a conspiracy in medical billing because I've seen it with my own two eyes. So we're at this point in time of, trying to cleanse is kind of hard with all the stress around us, right? And I've been doing group cleanses for 15, 20 years, and there's never been less demand than there is during COVID. Like you're pulling teeth to get people to cleanse during COVID. With all this extra time, you think that people would jump into, self-work and cleansing, but generally people's diets and self-care has gone down during COVID from my experience.
Well, certainly their physical activity went down.
But isn't that interesting? There was more time to ourselves.
Yeah.
And so whatever needed to be accomplished in terms of dumbing people down and making them less healthy, it was accomplished. Because fear suppresses oxygen metabolism and the immune system. Like you talk about a clenched fist fear, that's like, wow. So that was the basis of why I started natural law and why we do cleansing, is to get clearer. And so like, Gene, I loved your testimonial because you pointed out so succinctly about, I had teachers in my life that made me aware of things that I never dreamed were inside of me. And slowly but surely, it's like, I never was aware of that pattern in myself, And then, like, if you're willing to take what I call your lumps, if you're willing to take your lumps and get the reflection pointed out to us, then we can grow. But generally, a lot of us are floundering, and I really want to pick on the men because that's generally who's been not doing health stuff for the last 30 years. And because the masculine principle is about the known and the feminine principle is about the unknown. And so if a man's a masculine man and he gets faced with the unknown principle, a lot of them just fall apart. Women tell me all the time, it's like, yeah, he's getting closer and he's romancing me. And then there's a point where they just fall off and you see him like fall away. Or turn and run away, or freeze up, or deer in the headlights. And I've heard so many metaphors over the years, and I know the feeling. It's just, but you gotta You have the gargoyles in the church. This is my favorite metaphor. Those gargoyles in the church are there for a symbol. Like what are they guarding? That's why it's the same reason why the man's afraid to go deep, or the masculine principle is. Why are those gargoyles there? They're the gates of duality in the known. So letting go into, I don't know what's going to happen next. We know that feeling. Like, anybody ever done a trust fall? You fall backwards. You ever done a trust fall?
Yeah.
You talk about the unknown, like, wow, I'm putting my faith in, like, You done a trust fall?
I did it with my sons like 2 nights ago.
2 nights ago? No way.
But I was like, hey, you guys do a trust fall. I don't know. I was just inspired. So they did it. So it was kind of fun to watch.
Oh, you didn't do it yourself?
No, I don't think I did. I think I did it for my son. And then I was like, hey, go do it with your brother.
I'm going to have you do it next. Yeah. I had 6 men, 3 on each side catch me. And it was probably, there was a teenage one with the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend, and there was an MKP one that, the Young Men Ultimate Weekend was scary because it was probably 3 or 4 foot of a fall. And there's that moment of with a let go, it's like, okay, I'm committed. There's no turning back, and that's that key moment where we really see what we're about. Like, here's because then the mind can just go into like, and your contraction. I wish that could have made the video, but that's what sort of spring is about. We have this, the seed has the dream to grow to the plant. The human has the dream to, for their year, your New Year's resolutions. The resolution is the water element. And then the Chinese call this the wood element. Water becoming, right? Something's growing in the watery medium, right? They call that wood, but you could just as easily call it, myceliums or earth or, other things. They're, in the 5 element cosmology, wood's like water becoming something, or the dream starting to ground, the dream starting to take form. Right? So the seed has this blueprint it grows into, just like you have a blueprint you grow into, and you have a blueprint you grow into. That's called the morphogenic field. And there's a blueprint associated with that. And that's what Steiner has been talking about in this talk, is they were talking about these blueprint determinants. Roy Lee at Standard Process called them protomorphogens. The Celestine Prophecy guy called that just the morphogenic field. And you could call it the blueprint, which is more understandable than this fancy, like the medical words, right? They throw all these fancy medical words that you read in Latin. Oh, you know, like Charlie's diagnosis, idiopathic thrombocytotic purpura. Man, that just sounds like I'm gonna die. Oh God, kill me now.
I'm an idiot and I'm gonna die.
So I took Kelly aside and said, let's just break down the word. Idiopathic means we don't know. So any medical diagnosis preceded with idiopathic means we don't know.
Wow.
That immediately softens the load, right? Like, oh. And then thrombocyte is like your platelet. Purpura is purple. So it's like you could bruise easy because your platelets are low, and that's it. And we don't know how it's being caused. So I broke that down for Kelly, and Kelly's like, oh my God, they pull a fast one over on us. You know how Kelly is. She's like, it's a swindle. I'm like, yeah, it's a swindle. There was a single best moment of my life because I saw the lights go on in Kelly's eyes, and she's like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And then he was better a month later, just because they had hope. It was just that alone did it, because Kelly's an energetic being, because a lot of clients are never fully compliant. Like the kid was going to lose his leg, and they were going to knee replacement on a 15-year-old with an autoimmune bone thing. Can you imagine your son getting knee replacement? Well, that's why Kelly was at the Kelly referral. Kerry's like, you got to help this kid. They're trying to freaking give him a knee replacement and replace his femur. And I'm like, what? 15-year-old? That means like 3 new legs in his life because he only lasts 20 years. So I'm like, oh my God. So we had him fixed in like 3 or 4 months, but he had a vegan mom and a meat eater dad. So he was torn apart, and then he was being shamed into this vegan diet when he was a protein type. He didn't fill out any of his paperwork. His intake forms were like, imagine a 15-year-old, imagine your son's filling out 6 pages of intake forms from Craig. It's not going to happen. You get a few words out of him, and that's what I got, a few grunts, and and then I asked him though, what got through to him was, hey, what do you like to eat? Because they've been shaming him into this acupuncture, cooked vegetable, brown rice, vegetable diet when he really wanted bacon and sausage. He's a protein type. And protein types have to burn fat for energy. They don't oxidize carbohydrates well, just like a carbohydrate type doesn't burn fat well for energy. So either way, you're in your wrong fuel. You're either an unleaded fuel or a premium fuel engine. And then there's sort of adaptable fuel engines called mixed types. And that was the magic ingredient in my nutrition practice, was finding how to type those people now. It's not just blood type. It's not just ancestry. You got to take the test and do the work. So the kid just lit up. I said, what would you want for breakfast? And he says, my ideal breakfast would be like, 3 sausages and 3 eggs and some pancakes. And, I'm like, well, shit, pancakes aren't good, but how about we do scrambled eggs with spinach and some sausage on the side. And so we got a few veggies in the guy because, it's teenage. I didn't eat veggies when I was a teenager. You got to be realistic. So I give him some SB green food tablets he could shove in his lunchbox and take those. And he wasn't even fully compliant. He had the bone protomorphogen, so the bone blueprint, product that I use. He was playing volleyball after 3 months, or the doctors were saying knee replacement. It was so absurd. It was just absurd. So he was in autoimmune because the autoimmune starts in the gut. That's the great secret that they knew back 100 years ago. And that's what I was here to talk about a little bit tonight, was this enzyme work that they knew. All kinds of people were doing enzyme work and monitoring white blood cell count before and after different types of meals. And unless you got half raw or more, you had an elevated white blood cell count after you ate. And that's going to change by climate and person, but on the average, and the data over thousands of people was, that's Edward Howell was the good work, enzyme nutrition, if you want to look it up. And so that what they found was there's a whole table I have on my membership site of categories of the worst of the worst. And the worst of the worst was wheat, white flour, white sugar, cooked food. Cooked dairy and meat was a lot worse than raw dairy and meat in terms of elevated white blood cell count. So cooked vegetables is not as bad. If you boiled the vegetables below like 212 or below, then the enzymes wouldn't go up. But if you baked them or broiled them, then the white blood cell count would go up. So that tells me that the immune system's sensitive to damaged foods, right? Highly refined damaged foods. And one of the immune system's functions is to scan our bloodstream for lysed or broken DNA. Lysed or broken DNA looks a lot like a virus. There's a little secret to the COVID thing that I was talking about COVID years before it happened. And I said they're going to launch 5G and blame it on a microorganism. It's exactly what they've been doing. What's Eisenstein? Furstenberg's book, The Invisible Rainbow, speaks to this. The frequencies and how we need to look at frequencies more. And I'm getting way off on a tangent there. I'm going to go back to this spring cleanse thing. So we're going through these processes and spring is ideally a time, like if you think of like my ancestors are a lot of from Ireland, so it's a cold winter, you're inside a lot, probably eating salted meat back in the olden days and legs of lamb and dried, whatever root veggies you got, because there probably ain't many veggies growing like in New England in the middle of winter. Like even like, what are we at right now? Is there any veggies growing in New England right now? With climate change, air quotes. Probably not. I mean, because can't it snow in New England all the way through May, theoretically? So Americans particularly seem to have lost like seasonal eating, like I want my grapes in the middle of the winter grown in Chile. Oh, that's great. That's just great. So some boats bringing it up, from Chile, we're flying it. So the earth does what it does to help. The earth does what it does for its own reasons, but it does help us adapt. Like plant flavonols that we call vitamin C, bioflavonoid, the colors that make flowers what they are. They're plants' way of attracting, beneficial insects, keeping bad ones away, but frequency, colors have frequencies. And we don't talk about it like that. And then the other thing about flowers people don't talk about is flowers are a plant foreplay to sex. Foreplay. See, plants and humans are opposites a lot. We share a lot in common, like our blood and chlorophyll is almost identical. Scarily so, if you look at the actual chemistry of them, you know, it's just iron and hemoglobin. I mean, iron and hemoglobin and magnesium and chlorophyll. Now, if that doesn't strike awe in anybody, you're half dead. Like plant and human blood's almost identical. Like, doesn't that give you awe? Like, I get the shivers, like, wow. It's what? And then their brain is down in the soil. Our brain's on the top. Their sex organs are down at the, or no, our sex organs are at the bottom. Their sex organs are up in the air. Right? I started noticing this with my Afghanistan opium poppies. They would sit like this, and the flower head would form, and then it looked like a limp penis. And then as the flower started to go, it would go more and more. And then there's a capsule over because these are big carnation poppies. These aren't like the buttercup ones. These are like very complex peony. And this, when the flower, it's very dramatic where the cap comes off and the flower opens up. It's like, it's like an orgasm. And then the flower opens up, and then within an hour, you guys have seen the bees. I mean, it's like the bars open because the bees are on that nectar, like, ooh, opium nectar. They know, they're there. So I got films of this stuff. I love showing the films because you'll see bees clamoring over each other to get down to the nectar. Like, get out of the way of the bar. I need my sixer. Oh, it's hilarious. And then the poppy head, is that interesting how the poppy head has all those little rivulets in it? Like there could be 6 on some or 18 on others. You know how the poppy head has those little, where you shake it and the seeds come out? Well, they're not all uniform. It could be as few as 5 or 6 and as many as like 18 to 20. And so why would there be more and some less? I ask you. A mystery of nature. Why would there be some with 6 and one with 20? What does that mean? There must be meaning to that. You want to guess? Well, if you're watching the video, you've got a nice black screen here. I'm just loving this whole.
Plant Darwinism.
I was told the more rivulets there are, the more opium it's making, the more of the medicine it's putting out. I don't want to relegate poppies to just opium because it's not what they are. There's a lot more medicine in the full head, because the illegal part's to razor blade the head and collect the white milk. That's really close to opium. I tincture the whole head and chop the head off and tincture it, and it gives you more of the protein, the chlorophyll, the compounds that support the opioid or the pain relief. Okay, but I'm getting off track again. Darn it, that's the subject. I think I wanted to go just the whiteboard for the audience so they can see the spring cleanse kind of stuff. It's interesting. I put it on share, and then look at that. We're back on the screen there. Spring cleanse. Here we go. So there's these stages of congestion, and we're going to go through a few of. So when you get mucus, that's the first stage. I used to talk about this a couple of falls ago. When I met you, Jim, that was the pizza night. We were having the mucus, and we're going back, recycling through this a couple of years later. So you know when you get mucus buildup? I was telling this client today, he was like, I don't want to eat any, there's something he didn't want to eat, any lemon juice because it dissolves his teeth. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, you eat oranges, don't you? And he goes, yeah. And I go, it's the same deal, dude. I go, I have a test for you. And it's a cleansing test, actually. You actually squeeze a 1/4 cup of lemon juice. So it would be, imagine drinking, this much lemon juice. That's a 1/4 cup. That's quite a bit. That's 2 tablespoons?
Maybe 2 lemons?
It's 4 tablespoons. 1/4 cup is 4.
2 tablespoons is an ounce, and this is 8 ounce. Yeah, so 1/4 cup, yeah, would be 4 tablespoons. So you drink it, and then you wait 90 seconds. It's from the Arise and Shine book, Richard Anderson, naturopath cleansing book. And so then you have a pH strip, and you check your saliva pH. Should it be acidic or alkaline is the question.
After the lemon?
90 seconds after the lemon.
Acidic?
Meaning, because the lemon juice can be as low with pH as 2.5, which would dissolve your teeth. So your body responds with alkaline mucus, ideally. So if your body can't do that, that's how you test people for a deep cleanse. Because when you're cleansing, all kinds of acids are going to get stirred up. And I heard a story today that just blew my mind. The guy did like on and off a 6-month water fast. And he said at some point his entire old intestines fell out. And he said he couldn't believe what came out of him. Happened to me 9 or 10 times. I had 9 or 10 of those where I was like, zebra stripes. What is that? Space egg aliens. Spaghetti noodles. Boy, that looks ugly. Black tar. I even had a polka dot. Well, a set of polka dot ones, like purple and pink polka dots. I was like, that was definitely fungus, but I was glad it was out of me. Like, okay, whatever it was.
What was the fast they did? How did they do?
He just did a water fast.
Oh, so you just drank water, that's all you did.
Him, I was like coffee enemas up the rear end. I did stuff down this end, stuff on the top. I mean, stuff in every orifice, kind of oil pulling, dry skin brushing. I mean, see, what motivates people more than anything? Generally.
Money.
Pain, passion.
Ding, 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 ding. I was in pain.
Mm.
I had broken my neck. I wasn't breastfed. I knew I had a horrible start because I was very intuitive, and mom did her best, but mom was a Cheerios mom. She thought Cheerios was healthy. Bless her soul. And thanks, Mom. Great job. And oh, by the way, Mom's birthday is tomorrow. Mom, happy birthday tomorrow.
Cheerios still work.
Cheerios, yeah, it turned out okay, Mom. Oh, I lost my story. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Where was I just saying?
Fast.
Water fast. Okay, fasting. Thank you. Lars, right in time for fasting. So the fast, we're being recorded, Lars. So some people have to go deeper. So the guy, despite his water fast, still has issues. So I told him, I said, the water fast and the autophagy can only go so far given the resources that are there. I go, think of yourself as an architect, a contractor, and a building team with supplies. You got 4 things going on in your body. Your architect and your contractor is fine. You just don't have the right workers and the supplies, which is the nutrition. Now you're seeing me, and you'll be able to complete the processes and probably able to sleep at some point, but you're very old. And so it's like the scaffolding is kind of, and that's the dance, because we get wiser as we old, but the vehicle erodes a bit from, in some cases, abuse. I'd say that I'm alive in spite of myself. How many people can say that? I'm alive in spite of myself.
I'm in spite of myself because I'm alive.
That's a good reversal. So yeah, alkaline mucus. And then the next stage is irritation. But the irritation is what causes the mucus buildup. So it's kind of the same thing, right? The lemon juice is acids are irritating, aren't they? Put your finger in a vat of hydrochloric acid and you'll feel irritation.
The other thing, sorry to interrupt, but lemons are alkaline forming. So they have calcium, magnesium, vitamin C.
Well, we'll go into that in a minute. So then inflammation and infection can be driving the mucus buildup and the irritation too, but that's usually a third step, where when you see the word infection, right, which is an itis, inflammation is itis, and infection, then you know that these are the COVID people right here that do horribly with COVID. They've already got general irritation, mucus buildup, and inflammation. And those are the comorbidities you see. They didn't die from COVID, they died with COVID. And that was the distinction that paid off. There's like 500 new billionaires in the US in the last few years. Gee, I wonder why.
Yeah.
It's called scamdemic. So hardening of tissue, and this is why I do sclerology. In the sclera, in the white of the eye, you can see this going on. And so I was looking at yours, like what stage are we at here? And so then there's hardening of tissue, and then encapsulation. So you see encapsulation, that's stage 5 of 6. That's where, and then destruction of healthy tissue, abscess, ulceration is step 6. When there's enough destruction of healthy tissue, there's a point you can't turn back. For most people, there's a grace factor of spirit that can never, ever be denied, that I've seen in my own experience also. So if they have life in their eyes, I tell them there's hope. If I see dead fish eyes, I'm gonna kind of go talk to the relatives outside the door. Get your hospice team ready because there's no life in that being. So it's all about, like, you know, they call it the Shen in some traditions, just the spirit, and you see it in the eyes. And, you know, I know when mine is low because I don't make eye contact as much. You guys know, like, when I'm doing this, it means I'm low chi or I feel super toxic, which can be a delusion anyway. There you go. So the stage of congestion, there's ways to determine where you're at. And that's why I do photographs of people cleanses before and after. And because I've gotten so good with tongue and eye work, I can usually tell you what your labs are going to look like just from that alone. Which is how I knew that you had no business doing no freaking biopsy looking at your eye. There's no freaking way we want that going on. So if you're watching this video, then just realize there's a whole document here you can look at, especially if you're a member. And then I wanted to go to enzymes and how important they are for cleansing. So, you know, you could theoretically just take a lot of enzymes and you would start cleansing. And so the book that I'll recommend for you is called One Answer to Cancer, and it's Dr. William Kelly, and it's another dentist that did well with cancer. I don't know how many freaking dentists became nutritionists in the 20th century due to just imbecilic nutrition recommendations. So this is Dr. William Kelly, and he developed this whole enzyme system with cancer. And that's what will determine is, you know, where in any cancer case, we're looking at the pancreas first and foremost. Why? What? That's part of it, yes.
The pancreas creates enzymes.
Right. That's more primary than even blood sugar, because enzymes drive everything, including thinking. Afterwards, so enzymes drive everything, including thinking. So you know, people say they have brain fog when they eat a lot of cooked food. It's because all the enzymes are in the gut. Doesn't that make sense now? And so you give them more raw foods and their brain naturally clears up, which makes your chooser more clear, right? More discerning choices. So listen to this. This is from David Stewart. The title of the book is, I love this guy's work, The Chemistry of Essential Oils. Subtitle, God's Love Manifest in Molecules. I love this man. So he's a bridger. Book's about 700 pages. It's 350 of text and then 350 of tables, you know, the eugenols. And so it's a great essential oil book, you know, Bernie, we can share that with the other work. Great bit of work. So this is his quote on what enzymes are. It is not just the chemistry of a molecule that it enables it to open receptor sites and communicate with cellular intelligence. It is the more subtle electromagnetic properties of the molecule that actually transmit the message. This subtle energy is the basis of homeopathy. This is also the means by which enzymes work. Chemists have been always puzzled over catalysts and enzymes because these are molecules that have to be, why did I not break that down further? That have to be present for certain chemical reactions to take place. And there's the error. Even he makes the error. Chemical reactions aren't, in my opinion, aren't really what's going on. There's actions going on, but I don't think that we've agreed to call it chemistry, but is it really chemistry? There's transformation, transmutation occurring. There's alchemy going on. That's my way of saying it. I don't like the word chemistry because I associate it with death. Chemical reactions to take place best, and they don't actually participate in the reaction and are altered or consumed by it. So an enzyme isn't altered or consumed by the reaction, it's facilitated. It sounds like a human facilitator, doesn't it? Two people are arguing, facilitator comes in. Facilitator is like the enzyme for the two people. The facilitator is not really involved with the two people's problem, but it's facilitating a connection between the two. Thousands of enzymes work in our bodies, are long-term residents presiding over many processes, and then he goes through basically everything. They are the supervisors of biochemistry. They are biochemical managers. Just like the executives of companies don't actually do the work. Their direction and oversight are necessary for the corporate mission to be accomplished smoothly. And he talks about different essential oils and whatnot. So, you know, when somebody writes a book called The Chemistry of Essential Oils and then a subtitle God's Love Manifests in Molecules, I think, man, there's a lot of people out there like me that are just a little more hidden. And that this was actually a textbook, but I'm such a nerd. I bought the textbook when I started my essential oil studies back 21 years ago. Because you got to have hard copy to document what you're seeing when you're dealing with medical people. And I was already a good 5 years into medicine, and I knew I needed more credibility to be able to talk their language. And so that book helped. So one way to cleanse then is, you could take enzymes between meals. Talk about serapeptase. That's a well-known enzyme that came around years ago, a product called Vitalzyme, and Wobenzyme had it, and ZY, all these zymes with a Z on the end. So that's what Dr. Kelly was prescribing is if you eat too much cooked food, the reason why cancer and autoimmune associate with cooked food is because your body, the pancreas, back to that, is making enzymes to digest food, but it's also making enzymes between meals to break down waste. We all get cancer on the average 5 to 10 times a day. Every one of us does. It's just part of life, but our bodies deals with it. So what makes one person break down and not the other? It's the enzyme weakness. That was Dr. Kelly's theory. So you can take a lot of enzymes between meals if you know you have backed up waste. And then what you'll see is that the white blood cell count may temporarily go up because those are the cleanup crew. The pathmen get made more of. They're like, oh, we got a lot of enzymes now. Because there's one slide down here that describes that enzymes speed up the rate of reaction of the body. Enzymes speed up the rate of reaction of the body. So if you normally ran 10 miles an hour, theoretically, then an enzyme would help you run 15 miles an hour. Speed up the rate of reaction of the body. So if you're trying to cleanse and you don't have a lot of time, then that's a good way to get yourself rolling along faster. That's why that lady that did the chemo was no side effects, because she was taking enzymes with meals and between meals, and this high dose super vitamin E complex with a steroid with cow testicle cytoplasm extract in it. Their vitamin E product, their first ingredient is cow testicle cytoplasm extract in it. Vitamin E and cow testicle cytoplasm extract, like, please tell me why. As a formulator, I'm like, well, I like the idea of having cow testicle juice. I'm sure as a man, like, sure. But what the women would always ask me 12, 13 years ago, well, Craig, am I going to get hairy? And this poor client, I hadn't used the product much. And that's what she was asking me these tough questions. I was like, it's like calling my mentor at Center Process, like, hey, does this stuff, the women get masculine? He's like, shut up, it does not. So first of all, why is cow testicle extract associated with a vitamin E complex product?
Carrier for the vitamin E.
Do you guys hear what this man just said? It's a carrier. It increases oxygen metabolism to the periphery of the body. You're exactly right. It's carrying. So the vitamin E principle or process is basically, it's a chromosome protector. So vitamin E is an antioxidant, right? Because oxidation can damage the DNA, which is our hard drive of our cells' activities. The brain of the cell is not in the nucleus, it's in the membrane. Yeah, the brain of the cells is in the membrane. That's why the fats we eat is so important. Because if you eat bad fats, then you have stupid cells. And if you have stupid cells, you have a stupid immune system, which means cloaked biopleomorphic organisms can hide out real easy.
Come on, let's just go away, and then you have stupid people.
Sure.
Yeah.
I had the Homer Simpson slide. It's a Homer Simpson evolution slide. It's like man becoming something and then Homer at the end. With a big belly.
It's got to affect. If it's on the outside and the fats affect the cells on the outside, and our brain is 80% fat and they got all stupid membranes, it's got to be cumulative of some sort.
Right, so we could have a, oh, it's still early. So that's where, if you guys have questions, we can go into a little discussion period, because, man, I can go on for hours nonstop. Please stop me. Jesus.
This one?
When you go back to spring, I thought that was really interesting about your example about the flower.
Oh, yeah, there were so many different topics tonight.
I know.
Well, enzymes are driving that too, so. It's kind of like the theme is cleansing, right? So if you want to cleanse, you have, so. Oh, let's back to the vitamin E question. So we gotta answer that, because the audience is like waiting in anticipation. So it is the carrier thing, but there is another element to it. It's about oxygen. So the cow testicle extract offers more oxygenation to the cell, at least temporarily. So that's why it's in there. It helps the vitamin E get inside the cell easier. And it really is an interesting product. Like she and I'll be talking about it, because it's a really good product after what she's been through. So the last thing, I'll just go back to the plant. So just realize, if you're watching this video and you want to do a spring cleanse, and you can eat just raw foods, and if you're not familiar with eating 100% raw, that will initiate some cleanse for you. And if we define cleanse, is cleanse the same as detoxification? Yes and no. Like Isabel called me out on using the words duality and polarity too close together. She sent me this blog. This guy was comparing the root of duality and polarity. I was like, okay, that's a good distinction. I'm more careful. So is detoxification the same as cleansing?
No.
Not necessarily.
It can't be. I know this.
It's a trick question.
Yeah.
It takes a trickster to know a trickster.
Now you take a stab. You want me to take a stab at it? So detoxing is you're ridding your body of toxins and free radicals and unwanted things, where cleansing is you're putting something in and sticking to a pattern and a routine so that you flush one thing out and get your body onto another thing. I guess my analogy would be like snails. You feed them all cornmeal, so you make escargot that's not full of shit.
It is a trick question in a lot of ways, because there's not really a right or wrong answer, because I've seen so many different opinions about what these words mean. And that's really what's important, is not attaching meaning. You know, what's the intention? Like, you know, I sit down and I go, okay, why do I want to cleanse? You know,
I mean, Craig, you know, last week we brought up that you need to do a cleanse, you need 3 elements, right? You need to mobilize toxins, then you need to either bind them or reduce them to a less toxic form. And then you need to eliminate them. And if you don't have all 3 of those, you're not going to cleanse. And hence, a lot of people, their system isn't up to the task of detoxifying these toxins and eliminating them. So if you just do a water fast, you might mobilize toxins, but then they just get recirculated and redeposited in fat cells, unless you can bind them or reduce them to a less toxic form and eliminate them out of your system. Just so we all are clear on that.
so Carson is a great definition, because in my system, cleansing requires all 4 foundations to work. You've got to choose well and not overburden your blood sugar, especially when you're trying to cleanse. You've got to be able to use your microbiome in your gut, that's the first stage, like I call it, is kicking out, remodeling the apartment complex so you don't attract bad tenants downstairs, right? You don't try and kick out the bad tenants. You don't take anti-parasites. You work on the terrain. And so that's mobilizing stuff with clays and zeolites and herbs. And then what Carson was describing is part of foundation 3 and 4, which is detoxification is transformation. And then foundation 4 is drainage. So the metaphor is detoxification is like cleaning up your house, and drainage is like filling up your garbage cans and putting them out to the street. So the cleanup and, you know, like the transformation of this room, for example, if all of us got together and cleaned everything up, this room would look a lot different. So, but what about all the stuff that's lying around? That's what the body is looking at. Like, what about all this stuff that's lying around? Am I going to transmute it, or am I going to gobble it up and then sacrifice myself to get pooped out? Because fully 1/4 of your poop is your gut lining. 1/4 of every poop on the average is your gut lining. People with celiac, like if I would eat wheat when I was younger in a bad episode, I would eat something with wheat and I would have like 3 bowel movements from one little piece of bread. My whole gut lining would just slough right off. Gone. Yeah, that's what happens to people with celiac. They can eat wheat and their whole gut lining just unfolds like a scab off and they got to rebuild. It's really a horrible thing, actually, at its worst. So Carson's distinction is very well taken because a lot of people, they don't cleanse right. And there's a lot of, like, the Quicksilver guy is doing good work on that. And Dr. Dan Pompa with systemic formulas had some great talks on cellular detox and how you need to do it right. And Carson gave a great succinct definition. You gotta mobilize, bind, and get it out. You know, and that's a really simple formula that anybody can remember. So zeolite's a pretty safe binder, although there's some not safe zeolites. Clay can be a good binder, but then there's not safe clays. Some herbs aren't reliable. You really need to, in today's world, it's almost like I had to feel my way through, and I didn't have a lot of guidance except for books, and a lot of my teachers were just, to be honest, clueless, and I had to fight my way through myself. So it took me, 5, 10, 15 years, could probably take somebody, 2 or 3, maybe less at this point, because there's just more resources available through those of us that have kind of fought through. So just to go back to finish that flower metaphor, there's one other part to the flower metaphor I didn't finish, and that was plants exhale oxygen, which we use, and we exhale CO2, which helps them grow. And so the Steiner talk was really interesting. He was talking about carbon and why humans exhale CO2 and plants don't. And he says, carbon is the basis of all life. It's like the most primal element, and it's black, right? And it's like a fine powder if you just get pure carbon, right? But that's the basis of all of life. And so, but it can make things rigid. And that's why humans have to exhale their carbon, because we're mobile. Steiner was saying in this talk, like, that's why plants don't exhale their carbon, because they're rigid. And that's what carbon is. It's more rigid versus oxygen is more fluid, right? I was like, wow. That's the most simplest insight about just the personality of the elements right there. And there's a whole relationship with the other minor elements, like the chosen ones. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, sulfur, and nitrogen are the most of what makes up matter. But then there's this silica element that gets brought in, because silica also makes up things in the forms of life. But I digress. So that's the final one. Is there's a chlorophyll connection, there's a brain connection, and then there's the CO2-O2 connection, that we have a very symbiotic relationship with plants on the planet. So wouldn't it make sense that if you want to cleanse, you find the plants help you do it? So Royal Lee, on this article that you see on the whiteboard here, if you're watching the video, there's I found the article on the raw potato salad, believe it or not. Yeah, there's a raw potato salad in here. And I'm going to tell you guys something that you might never, ever have heard. Dr. Royal Lee discusses the nutritional value of raw potatoes, explaining much of that value is lost when they are cooked. We may estimate that 25% of the vitamins that are lost in cooking, either by heat or leaching, the loss of vitamin C is particularly fast. One of the enzymes found in raw potatoes is phosphatase, which enhances phosphorus metabolism, which promotes assimilation of calcium and iron in particular. Another is tyrosinase, an essential component of the vitamin C complex and associated directly with the function of the adrenal glands. And I might add, tyrosine is your thyroid hormone. Tyrosine bound to 4 iodines, that's T4, tyrosine bound to 3. So there's the adrenal thyroid vitamin C connection right there. And raw potatoes have the highest source of this enzyme that helps the adrenals and the thyroid. This is Lee saying later, Dr. Lee often referred to raw potatoes and raw mushrooms as the best sources of tyrosinase available. He gives tips on using fresh lemon juice and fresh extracted potato juice, which is, but don't do potato juice. It's so disgusting. It's the worst, folks. I found the best way is you cube the potatoes and then you marinate them in vinegar and salt and like garlic or something. You can make little pickled raw potatoes and put them in your salad. And they're quite delightful. So there's a recipe for that here. Raw potato salad.
Pancakes once. It's horrible.
I've done raw potato chips. You cut the potato, the raw potatoes very thin and then soak them in vinegar and salt and dehydrate them. But I can't get them sliced thin enough. They're crunchy, but they're not crispy. You know, when they're that distinction between crunchy, you know, Ben, crunchy and crispy, there's that fine line. Like Pringles were crispy. Tortilla chips are crunchy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like there's a thin, it's like a thin crust pizza. There's that sound that I can't duplicate. You know,
Salad Master makes it really nice.
Yeah, I thought like if I put the potatoes with carrots in a blender and added a tiny bit of onion and then I added Bisquick and I blended it all up. I thought, well, and I added like, you know, like a half a cup of oil. I thought like it would come out like a pancake French fry. And it kind of did, but then it just was like this gooey ball mess that just was like it flattened. But it never got, the outside got crispy, but the inside, it was like.
killing me.
Dude, I have to make a video of this thing because it just every time it's just like.
Oh my
this
goodness.
gooey thing on the frying pan.
Oh,
We share the recipe.
that's legend.
Yeah.
Oh my
I mean,
gosh.
it's Friday. Yeah, it was fun, you know. I was thinking like I'd make a veggie patty, you know what I mean? I got this like veggie press, this hamburger press. There's no way you can make a veggie patty out of that. It turned out to this lot cut thing.
Thanks, Ben. I'm going to summarize. So Ben brought up, you know, this idea of, you know, grating vegetables. We do the chia cake that way. You grate vegetables, scrambled eggs, and then add some ground flax or chia. To finish the enzyme thing tonight, I just wanted to mention from the PowerPoint here that any word that ends in ASE is an enzyme. So like lactose, the enzyme for lactose is lactase. The enzyme for, well, one of the carbohydrate enzymes is amylase. Lipase is the fat enzyme for lipid, like lipid is fat, lipase. The protein enzymes don't add up. There's proteases, but they're broken down by different enzymes. And then there's enzyme inhibitors. And that's what the Western price people talk about, you know, seeds and grains and unsoaked stuff have these enzyme inhibitors. So why does nature do that? Because it's obviously not, nature's not dumb. Why is nature making enzyme inhibitors and seeds, beans, anything that's sproutable basically has enzyme inhibitors? Why does nature do that?
So they don't come to life until the conditions are right. And,
Ding, ding, ding.
and so they're preserved until the conditions are right.
The most dramatic example of that I ever saw was the Kamut story. Kamut came out of King Tut's tomb. It's a particular old heirloom strain of wheat from Egypt, and had been sitting in this tomb for over 2,000 years. And some farmer out in Illinois got these seeds and regrew it. From 2,000-year-old seeds, they still sprouted. And that's what Kamut came from. King Tut. Really?
No, I'm joking. Joke
Uh,
about it. It has like a 50-year seed bank, so if you pull out all your Scotch broom and your French broom, it just keeps coming back every year.
it's a monster.
Yeah, anyway.
Good. Well, we're up in the Gilroy Mountains, and that's where that yellow flower that goes along the road there. So wherever you start carving into mountains and the soil falls, the broom grows, because I just did a video about this called Earth's Anatomy, that the earth doesn't want open soil because the soil is the earth's muscle and skin. So when we have a wound, we have a scab. So the broom is a Band-Aid. The crabgrass is a Band-Aid. You like all those pioneers in permaculture, the pioneer plants that come in and seal up the wound?
Yeah, they're opportunistic, invasive exotics, and they heal the land. Like thistle is really good at healing the land.
Yeah, what do? We weed it out, right? So I tell people, like, remember that last house we were in, the crabgrass infested backyard? How fast was that not an issue? Didn't even notice it after 2 or 3 months, right? Because you plant counter invasives. How do you choke out invasives? With good healing counter invasives. I had figwort back there and moon and plantain and that native spinach that Ellie gave me just took over that whole section, and the golden berries and the St. John's worts and the, oh my God, the self-heal, the prunella just took over, you know, and then it's like, well, crabgrass, like, that's nothing compared to what we got. And then so it's medicine overpowering even crabgrass has some medicine to it, you know, and those castor bean trees, remember how fast those castor bean trees took off? And, you know, so we have the same thing in our body that the earth does. When there's a wound, we seal it up. And so the plants that seal up wounds, like Carson was saying, thistles, like right now, the thistle greens are like so nutritious. Milk thistles, well-known liver protector. Well-known. And my artichoke plant remember that artichoke plant from the other house? That was, you know.
And by the way, it's great in smoothies and it's great in salads. You just trim off the spikes and you got a lovely green that's very nutritious.
Very nutritious.
Very flavorful, zero toxins, because that's how you can tell a plant probably doesn't have any chemical toxins in it if it's got spikes, because then it doesn't need to protect itself, right?
Right.
So, and it offers us the liver purifying properties.
And you put it in the blender raw?
Yeah.
So at Ben's house,
So you take the spikes off?
Same thing with.
You get scissors and
No,
just
you
cut the
take
spikes
them off if you put it in a smoothie. You do the same thing with stinging metal, raw, and they make an awesome smoothie. Be a little bit fibrous, but I digress. I don't want to get off on a tangent.
you can strain it through, you can strain that stuff through, like I'll puree it with apple juice and water and then run it through a strainer after 10 minutes and squeeze out. I don't want the fiber. I get enough in my diet. So Ben, you have mustard greens, radish greens. I saw nettles. I saw thistle in your yard. Like you could be like green smoothing it up.
Really?
Oh my
I thought
God.
all those things were waste.
Oh,
No,
see?
no, wow.
His backyard, you can't even believe what's growing in this guy's yard. It's superfood. Yeah.
Really? You have to show me all this
Yeah,
stuff.
I understand. But you didn't know,
I
right?
had no idea. I just thought there were weeds growing, and we got a dog, and the dog's made a lot of poop. So I'm like, these guys are just loving this soil right now. They're all big and tired.
He's got gophers and a dog. So the poop, you know, the dog poops and the nitrogen gets in the soil. So the weeds are so green, and you can't believe this yard, Carson. Yeah, the mustard's like 3.5 feet tall.
You eat that?
Huh?
You eat all those things?
You eat all that, man. You could have salads galore. You don't even need to buy greens, man.
I feel bad.
It's free.
I wheat wax for you guys. It's like, yeah, chop them down, you know what I mean?
Well, they're not mad at you because they don't know, you don't know any better but yeah, they were, see, I'm a plant whisperer. So I came in there today and I was like, oh man, it was painful. Oh man, pain.
I did it for you.
Oh, it's so ironic. It's so ironic, isn't it?
You know, like,
Oh,
I
my
just see a
goodness.
whole junkyard. It's like, "Oh, more food," you know what I mean?
I would have loved to have seen the yard with all the junk out there. Oh my gosh.
Well, I'll tell you, they're gonna grow back.
They will.
Yeah.
Oh, that's like a Saturday Night Live skit. I can just see you thinking, oh, I'm gonna make the yard look pretty for Craig.
Well, then I didn't want to get the whole thing looking good for you guys.
Oh my goodness.
Somebody's like this tall.
Yeah. Oh goodness.
But yeah.
That is a good skit though, Gene.
You think you're doing? Oh my goodness. Yeah. We're getting close to 9. I better wind this up. Oh, the last thing tonight is auto intoxication. This is why you need to cleanse. So this is an article that Bernard Jensen wrote, and I love it because the article is called "Death Begins in the Colon: Auto Intoxication and its Inflammatory Degenerative Signs." So Jensen wrote, he isolated various, quote, poisons of the elementary intestinal toxemia. And listen to some of these words: escatol, indol, sulfuretted hydrogen, ammonia, methylmercaptan, cadaverine. I got some cadaverine in my colon today, folks. That sounds really nice. Muscarine, tyramine, that's from cheese, isn't it? Sepsin, like sepsis, blood poisoning. You got some sepsin in your intestines today. Guanidine, that's one I want to talk about. Guanidine. So have you ever heard of the word guanidine?
No.
What is guanidine?
Fat dropping. It's the iodine form.
Just that shopping.
Is he close?
No, but it's very funny. So
He's waiting for a pet detective. Have you seen it? The scene's like, he's eating the stuff and he's like, what is it? It's made of guano. He's like, oh yeah, it's good. What is it? Fat dropping. Maybe they made that up. There's no such thing as why.
okay, I am going to finish this, I swear. So I found out about guanidine again because of the standard process people, and Dr. Royal Lee was talking about this back in 1940, and I'm like, God, we were so pathetic how little we know. So guanidine, he calls it a tissue poison, and it's very alkaline actually. And guess what the main source of it is?
Don't look at me.
Overcooked meat. Overcooked meat.
No kidding.
Overcooked meat causes this alkaline tissue poison that causes really bad neuritis type of pains.
Oh, interesting.
So I got clients with neuropathy and neuritis now. That's one of my questions is how much sugar are you eating? And how much well done steaks are you eating? Over barbecued, overcooked meat, right? Especially cooked on dry heat versus wet or moist heat.
Right.
So that's guanidine. And what's the neutralizer of guanidine? This is what blew my mind. Why some people do really well on it and others maybe not. There's two neutralizers for guanidine.
Butter?
Good guess, no. Good guess though. Two neutralizers. I'm gonna take a shot. Apple cider vinegar and chlorophyll.
What?
Chlorophyll, like green juice. So that's why the chlorophyll pearls from standard process, those fat soluble, really dark gray things, they've given those to people and they suck on them until they break open in the mouth. And if they have the guanidine type of pain, one lady had been stuck in a wheelchair for no less than 10 years, unable to stand because she was in such horrible pain. She had like alkaline, like crystals cracking. So as the story goes, they put the chlorophyll pearl and it took like 3 or 4 pearls later, 15, 20 minutes later, she spontaneously stood up for the first time in 10 years. And that's what got me into the company. I was like, what? That doesn't happen. The other miracle story from people standing up is DMSO. One lady says, as long as she put DMSO on her legs every day, she could walk. And then it would wear off, and the next day she'd put it back on again and she could walk, but only with a certain dilution of DMSO on her legs. And the medical people don't want you to know that. That's sulfur.
Yeah,
That's the sulfur.
same thing with like Epsom salts, magnesium, sulfate.
Sulfate.
It's the sulfate that's really helping. People think it's magnesium. Sure, that's good, but it's the sulfate that's really getting into your body.
Thanks for bringing that in, Karsten.
Yeah.
So the last thing here, the reason why I brought up this auto intoxication is because of a client that I had. There's tests you can do for these intestinal toxins, by the way. But I brought this up because I had a really like a life-changing client. Yeah, how long ago was this? 10, 11, 12, maybe 10, 11, 12 years ago. And I'm not going to mention her by name, but the long of the story short was they were going to cut her spinal cord, a 21-year-old woman, so her chronic foot pain would go away. That was their medical solution. There was another semi-related Kelly Deary referral. You can't believe the amount of referrals from Kelly. I mean, Kelly's a saint in sending me all these people, you know. So she wanted to have a family, and obviously, you know, she hadn't really had a boyfriend yet. And there's certain details I won't go into. I'm working on my confidentiality. And but she wanted to have a family, and they were going to cut her spinal cord, which means no hope of kids ever. But she would be out of pain in her feet and probably halfway numb. So unacceptable. Unacceptable, right? So she'd been to like the Mayo Clinic and all the best, and then I jokingly said, so now you're in the quack who gets results office, because the whole family was there, like 10 of them in a half circle around me, and I'm like, I got this, and they're like, what? You're so confident, and I'm like, yeah, don't you take forms, and oh, then I go, So has anybody asked you guys this question yet? And they're like, "Hmm." So this intake form says you have one bowel movement a week your entire life? Like,
Wow.
and no one flagged that your entire life and you're 20 years old now? I go, you need to have a bowel movement every 24 hours. Transit time is 24 hours. So when you eat breakfast one morning, breakfast needs to come out the next morning. You have lunch one day. So ideally, if you have 3 meals a day, you have 3 bowel movements. Ideally, but if they're having one a day, I'm happy with most people. But as my own health got better, one of my teachers says you could have diarrhea and loose bowels and still be constipated. I heard that 25 years ago and I was blown away. What the F does that mean? It means on your intestinal lining, the mucus is so strong that the toxic mucus is covered over the layers and the food just slides right through like a slippery slide. But you're constipated because you got all the mucus down here that's clogging everything up. And that was Craig Lane. That's why I did the dry rice and the clay, because that's what it takes us to bind onto that. And then it pulls it out finally. And then the most dramatic one was 12 feet came out of this guy, 12-foot long black tar with the intestinal lining showing in it. I've got hundreds of photos of this stuff. I was really into it back in the day. Like, you just can't believe what comes out of people. I'm like,
That's what you should dessert.
I'm full of shit. So it's like, like, whoa, look at that. You can even see the folds in the intestines in there. So that's why people are really overconfident. They come in, oh, I have a bowel movement every day. And I'm like, let's look at your tongue. Look at that slime on your tongue. That's all the way down. That's why the tongue is so important. So long story short, that's auto intoxication, right? She was having 1 bowel movement a week when she should have 21. So she was auto intoxicating 20 bowel movements a week. All those toxins get absorbed back to the liver. All of them, because the intestines absorbs the fluid and takes it back to the liver via the portal veins. So she was toxifying her liver, which toxified her heart. They had ablated her atrioventricular node. They had done heart surgery. They had done low back surgery. They had done abdominal endoscopies. Frankenstein this lady out, this is a classic case, Melissa. And that was step 1. So we had her bowels moving every day within a month. And 9 months later, she was out of pain. I mean, her foot pain was so bad she couldn't wear shoes. And now she has a family. It's just one of those like auto intoxication. Like, get your freaking bowels moving, people. If you're watching this video and you're not having daily bowel movements, that's step 1.
So they wanted to cut her up instead of make sure she shit.
Basically, that's that's the moral of the story. Is that's how clueless they are.
So when the only tool you have is a hammer, everything is like a nail.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's all they know.
that's all they know.
Yeah, I mean,
Melissa just saw that, right? She saw the one-trick pony that they are. They're the one-trick pony circus act.
well, yeah, I mean, what are their solutions to your problems? It would be pharmaceutical drugs or radical surgeries.
Radiation.
And chemo and radiation.
It's-
Those are their
It's
tools.
what the insurance companies will give us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's what our big pharma run medical schools taught us.
Right, and so this is what we administer, is all this stuff.
Yeah,
So
and it's what the bought and paid for medical journals say works. It's what the studies that are funded
By the same people.
by the same people show works. You don't have any evidence that what Craig is offering works, because big pharma isn't funding the studies that are in the medical journals to show that it works. Kind of thing.
Right. No,
So
you're on-
how do you counteract that? I've got 100 testimonials on my website from high-level corporate executives on LinkedIn. They all have LinkedIn profiles. So I just put them all in there. Oh, you don't believe what I've done? Why don't you go talk to Paul Wayne that worked for Chevron and Romo internationally his whole life? And I helped him raise his kids. Why don't you talk to him? Oh yeah, I'm a quack. Let me talk to him. Why don't you talk to the lady that has kids now, didn't have kids before? We talk to all these doctors that could be sued. I could go down, I could take down so many doctors and their ineptitude. These UCSF cancer doctors, I could take them down. This East African girl died. They wouldn't take what I was going to give. And so they gave her the medical insure and she died 2 weeks later.
Oh, wow.
And I told the father, I said, you should sue these motherfuckers. And he was so grief stricken, he couldn't imagine. You lose a child. I mean, last thing he wants to do is go to court. And then he came to see me because he himself had cancer. not only did, he said, I remembered you because you stood up for what was right, despite their abuse, basically. And so he came to me himself, pooping out of a bag. I cried. I rarely cry in an appointment, but I openly wept in front of the man. I was like, wow, you trust me enough to come in here with your colon cancer after your daughter died semi under my care. Oh, I was so touched, like, wow. But that's how bad it is out there, like it's just that bad. Like very few, cancer is like this scary word, but to me it's like autoimmune. Oh, like, so what? It's just a label.
Yeah, how many people have cancer don't even know it, they battle it every day?
I could have it for all I know. Any one of us could. Who cares? That's why I'll never go to the hospital and get diagnosed.
Yeah.
Never.
And-
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're watching this video, I hope you enjoyed yourself. And there's lots of stuff on the website if you're interested in cleansing. You don't have to do a 21-day cleanse. Shahid and I are doing, we're gonna have on the website, a 3-day power cleanse, a 7-day and a 10-day cleanse. Because we figured, like, I've had a few clients that just wanted to do what Shahid today called a lazy cleanse. Well, I got a 3-day weekend, I'll do a lazy cleanse. I'll take a bunch of supplements. I was like, $99, $4.99 now, $9.99 tomorrow. And on that note, you better join membership now because it'll only be $1.99. Next year, $2.99. You pay now. You pay now or big money later. Signing out on that note.